So today we're going to talk about somewhat confessional, but also somewhat conceptual type of work in music I find to be quite common with a lot of artists, all types of women, made chants, non-binaries. Recently, one of you guys sent me an email with a link to an album that you produced. G Northway sent me a record. The record explores gender and sex-based violence, power dynamics, and relationships on both personal and political levels. For Anita was inspired by Dr. Anita Hill, my own experience on this subject, my political consciousness, and my experience organizing in college for sexual assault survivors. I worked on it for 3 years, and as the subject of this email states, it was never touched by any man. I am the composer and producer, which is G Northway, and only had myself and my femme/non-binary musician friends play on it. I listened to the record, and I think you guys should too. I'll make a little playlist with the people that we're going to be discussing today. Some of the music for Anita, but then also some Fiona Apple, this group called Nisladka. I don't actually know a lot about them outside of their music. This is kind of a bit of a coincidence, me stumbling upon all of these artists that I've listened to throughout my life and already know about and stuff like that, but stumbling upon them all together recently. Once again, for example, I haven't listened to Fiona Apple in a while, and just recently watched one of her music videos for, I think, Fast As You Can, and I was like, oh, I love this music video, it's always one of my favorites. There's some kind of connective tissue between all of these projects to me, and I don't just mean that they talk about sexual violence, for example, and it's not really the genre, because I think that this type of music is always kind of a blend of things. It's never just one cut and dry genre. Something Kate Bush-esque, Bjork going on, the approach to conceptual work that's done here. There is a certain flavor to this type of production, and oftentimes it is called kind of intimate or maybe garage band-ish approach to it. This is what people usually describe it as, but with big acts like Fiona Apple, except for her Fetch the Bolt Cutters, I guess, album. Her albums were always produced in with a big studio and stuff like that, so it's not really the fact that it's produced with a big studio or not. Choosing the writing approach, the way that these artists are always talking about their work, it seems and it just feels very different than any other type of work, which is really strange because, for example, FK Twigs has something similar to this. However, I wouldn't put her in the same category in terms of stylistic, the style of music, as Fiona Apple, because their instrumentation is always very, very, very different, yet they have so much in common, Maybe there's some songs you could argue are closer to each other, but to me, FKA's music, for example, Mary Magdalene, that entire record was a lot more industrial and a lot more synthetic, but not in a bad way. Just a lot of instrumentation that's computer generated and stuff like that. It's really interesting that, to me, all of these artists are still, they're still occupying the same space. Recently, I remembered a song that used to be everywhere on the radio and on TV, constantly was up there on the charts my entire childhood, and it was songs by this artist that you guys are probably not familiar with at all. I think that even though you are familiar with Tattoo, I doubt that you're familiar with a lot of other artists of that era from Eastern Europe, but this artist called Zemfira, she had some hit songs, so big, it's literally insane. They're everywhere and they stuck around since they were released, it's kind of one of those artists that just pops up once and just stays on top for the rest of their lives. It's really interesting for me to rediscover that artist now as an adult, because going back and listening to it now, it's such a different experience. And the reason why I'm bringing her up is because she feels like a Russian Fiona Apple to me, especially with where she moved after the first albums in terms of performances live. She stopped having a lot of instrumentation because I think that the mixing live music was kind of stressing her out, and I kind of get it. But the point is, and there's a few things I wanted to talk about because I kind of stumbled upon the Fiona Apple video by, Anti-Heroines. And because of that video, I also watched Tori Amos, video. Never listened to Tori Amos, so I can't really say anything about her in regards to how I perceive her music, etc. However, after watching this video, I do want to talk about this through line that is quite common in a lot of albums that are made in this specific manner. And it is, one, yes, these women are really interesting. They are very educated or curious about the world and constantly innovating. But there is something very specific about their album, something that I noticed with a lot of artists that I would put in the same category in terms of like where they sit musically or conceptually as, for example, Zemfira, is this artist constantly talking about their gender in a way that is, to me, dangerously close to repackaged patriarchy that's been really popular recently. I've talked about this before when we talked about the occult roots of fascism on my main channel in that second part of the video. The first part also applies, but in this case, it's more about this obsession with nature and the divine feminine. And there is, we have to be, obviously I have to be really clear on what I'm talking about specifically here, because this isn't to say that these are critiques that critique their character or something like that. These are just snippets from different interviews that I've heard from Fiona Apple or Tori Amos or anybody else talking about them, and how often these artists end up going this route of talking about nature and femininity in a very womb-centered way, which makes me feel really grossed out. It makes you feel like an object, even though technically they're not talking about you, and technically it's not objectification in the same way that we usually talk about it. And the reason why it jumped out at me so much recently in the past like week or so when I was preparing for this video or this episode is because specifically Zemfira, her music, I listened to so many songs, so many lyrics and stuff like that. And I was kind of shocked to see that it didn't have that flavor of repackaged patriarchy. Maybe I just haven't seen enough of her stuff or didn't read into enough lyrics of hers. I've listened to 3 of her albums last week to like really get a sample of it, and I was genuinely taken aback by the fact that it didn't veer into that territory that usually turns me off a lot from Western acts that have the same approach or the same place within the musical landscape or within the industry, you know, of music. And obviously everyone has the right to have whichever relationship you want to have with nature and with whatever, it's spirituality and other shit like that. That's none of my business, but I think it is definitely something that we have to discuss because it is something that definitely has a very specific correlation to each other and is in many ways a right-wing pipeline for more open-minded women or femme-presenting people in general, because we're more open to having these conversations about either spirituality or feelings or therapy, energies, other shit like that, you know, but like people are more open-minded to discuss this these topics, including things like astrology, things like that, right? There's nothing wrong with those things on their own, but they are a very well-known path to becoming kind of Savitri Devi pilled, which if you haven't heard about it, you might want to watch that video I've made on the occult origins or occult connections to fascism. I want to underline that this is not about the album that was sent in or anything like that. It's not about you guys. It's about Tori Amos specifically. And also, I think that with Fiona Apple, I would say that she doesn't have the same issues that Tori Amos has, in my opinion. And again, if you are a huge Tori Amos fan, you can let me know what you think in the comments. But I found that a lot of the music that I heard, like I went and I listened to the songs that were referenced in the video, and it was a lot of songs because it's kind of like an overview of her career. And I was kind of seeing a lot of that divine feminine type of shit seeping in, and sometimes most of the time, not even with the same terminology, because the terminology has changed. Obviously, this approach that we have right now is very much a TikTok speak approach. So a lot of the words are tweaked or a lot of new words are introduced to talk about the same fucking concepts. It's really interesting to see this differences, I wonder why there's such a huge difference between these artists, like the ones that I just listened to from Eastern Europe. It's basically this group called Nieslatka and also Zemfira. Why there's such a huge difference between their approach and then Tori Amos's approach, for example, which technically they are this, conceptually driven postmodern music, I think I have my guesses. First one is, I think that Tori Amos's Straightness. And this is interesting because the thing is, Fiona Apple seems like I think that she's also straight. And she doesn't have that much of an issue with this as Tori Amos does. But it seems like this relationship of like having to deal with men, not having an option not to deal with them, seems like it is making, like it's having a huge impact on the way that they can process concepts or how they process existence. It's like there's like a barrier there, which I don't see in Zemfira's writing, which might be for a very particular reason that is kind of speculated, so I'm not going to be speculating too much. But I also want to mention just about Fiona Apple, just really quickly. It's going to be really messy today. Just going to let you know. We're going to be jumping around a lot from one artist to another, from one thought to another, because I have so many disjointed notes. Like I looked at them and I tried to organize them and it's just not fucking working. I don't know what's wrong with me today. My hands are shaky for no fucking reason, that kind of shit. Anyway, Fiona kind of gathered a lot of controversy in the beginning of her career for some reasons that were kind of crazy, honestly. Like she won this award, went up to receive the award, said a bunch of things that are pretty normal for a teenager to say, which she was a teenager. I think she was 18, 19 max, something like that. Gave a speech like be true to yourself kind of shit, and also being like, this is bullshit, like this is really nonsense, like this whole thing with the awards and whatever. And she talked about it afterwards, saying that she felt like a sellout for some reason in that moment. Even though she wanted recognition, it felt like it wasn't recognition from her peers or from her audience. It felt like it was recognition from people who don't give a shit, like executives or something like that. The way that Hollywood doesn't give a flying fuck that there's people dying on the streets every single day. They don't give a flying fuck about anything that's actually scary or fucked up. But the way that they yap and the way that they cry and the way that they whine about somebody coming up and like giving a speech that mentions something very surface level too. It's not like it was even that provocative. Like everything that these women do, genuinely, everyone who like gets a lot of flack, a lot of hate and whatever, I'm just sitting there like, holy shit, you guys, like they haven't said a single thing that was controversial, in my opinion. Maybe something that's a little bit uncouth to mention on daytime television or some shit like that. And even then, so mild anyway, that I'm just like, I never understand why people have such a just strong reaction to every single thing they fucking do. What is it, Will Smith that slapped some other guy, Chris Rock or something? And then they were yapping and crying about it for fucking weeks, those losers. I swear to God, like an entire industry of just the biggest whiny bitches. It's crazy. Anyway, with Fiona, you could see that definitely her career, like she was getting kind of a different treatment because she wasn't very grateful and a musician that is obsessed with other musicians and wants to make them like her kind of person, which is something that you have to be in order to appease the industry. Remember when Taylor Swift was releasing her like 4th or 5th album, whatever the hell, and she would be sitting there in interviews being like, can you imagine it was Meryl Streep? Is it Streep? Fuck. Okay, my accent's getting in the way. You get it. You get what I mean. I'm just such a huge fan. Like they always do this weird shit where they talk about how like they get starstruck themselves. It always feels so fucking performative and icky to me. Like, okay, bitch, like who gives a shit? Like this is so Western nonsense. I can't even I don't even know where to start. I think that it's really strange to look back on the first album that Fiona Apple released, Tidal, and seeing how people were reacting to the music videos that she released and other things like that. Specifically the fact that she got so much flack for the Criminal music video. I think that the reason why, like I understand what the kind of conceptual qualms they had with that music video and obviously the song, and of course the fact that yes, they were saying, at least Fiona and like the director of the video, they were kind of saying that this is a video that makes fun of what they're portraying or kind of satirizes it, which obviously does not, because there's nothing that actually subverts the expectation or subverts the visuals that are presented, right? It's really strange to see how Fiona was the one who got all the flack, even though she wasn't the director of the music video. She was not the producer, clearly wasn't the one calling the shots on that music video or subsequent few, until maybe when she released some music videos for her second album. It seems like her first album, she had to do a lot of things that she didn't really think about that much, because she is a musician. She's not a visual artist where music videos, photography and other things like that are a huge part of the product in terms of her having sole control over it, right? And it's just that whole video, I was just sitting there like, shit, it was probably just a bunch of people who are very senior to her in that industry making that music video, and then her having to deal with all the flack from that at the age of like 18. It's really, really something. I think the type of criticism that she got from some of the women who were, I assume, critics who were critiquing from a feminist perspective, I think it's fair to critique things. I am not going to be here telling you that you cannot critique women or something like that. We have to critique each other to do better work. It's just kind of like, that's normal. However, I think the way that the critique was formulated and everything, it was really, really strange, because I think that the people who were criticizing her were a lot older than her. And instead of addressing the executives and producers, directors, who had obviously a lot more of a say over a music video for an 18-year-old girl who just got signed to a massive deal with a record label, crazy what kind of lazy-ass critiques people were getting away with back in the day. And I'm sure that people are getting away with the same type of shit nowadays too. I just think that criticism in general is kind of dead in the water, not because we don't need it, but because actually it's mostly just the way that the speed of media and the devaluing of literacy and the literacy rates being in the gutter are to blame for why we don't have as many critics as we used to. But it's just so fucking strange. No context whatsoever. The type of reviews, the type of parodies that were released about this 18-year-old is so crazy. When you had Kiss on the stage being rebels without a fucking cause, like no real concept to their work, no real contribution to music that is worth a damn, no experimentation, no nothing, apolitical, which is like just right-wingers being grifters kind of shit. And they didn't make parodies of them as much as they did of fucking Fiona Apple at 18 releasing a song. It's really fucking something. Okay, first of all, also I need to mention, I told you it's gonna be messy. It's gonna be like a fucking bullet points type of deal where it's just kind of jumping around everywhere. But I wanted to mention the line from When the Pawn, the second album. First of all, her lyrics are actually pretty great most of the time, honestly. One of those lyricists that's actually really fun to listen to, especially because the thing is, in songs, it is very difficult to actually make something worthwhile fit into the confines of that rhythm and of that, the melodies that you're putting in there as well, right? But this line, hunger hurts, but starving works when it costs too much to love. Obviously a parallel or a metaphor to basically abstaining from having any feelings or getting into anything with anybody, because starving is more sustainable than going through these like ups and downs of satiating hunger and then being hungry again and stuff like that. And it's not about obviously eating, it's about the, I guess, affection, love, experiences in general of any magnitude that involves other people. And apparently this went viral. Fuck, I don't know. It probably was Tumblr. Let's be real. Probably on Tumblr with like the ED girlies. Why do you have to take that and turn it into some ED bullshit? Like, I swear to God, I just see it all the time. Something being taken, like fucking blue butterflies. When I found out about it, my jewelry brand has a blue butterfly piece that's pretty central to the first collection and pretty important for it. And then I found out that it's like a symbol for ED girlies, and I was like, are you fucking kidding me? The behavior around it, the type of bullying that's happening right now with the use of like Ozempic and other things like that being so normalized, you just kind of look at people and you kind of go, ugh, it's like looking at those people in the Capitol from the Hunger Games, you know? It's just this whole thing. It's just like icky. It sucks that that music where it had nothing to do with this, it turned into this phrase that they use now as kind of like a motivational kind of thing. Whatever. I sent this music video that honestly reminds me in terms of its like aesthetic, it's so fucking 90s. It's this Zemfira's music video called Escala, which is like, I was looking, I guess. It's hard to translate things sometimes because they just like don't sound right. But this music video, it has like the coloring, the color treatment of the video, the way that it's filmed, her outfit, her hair. It's just so 90s, mostly because of The Matrix. I guess it's not really The Matrix per se, but it's just like there's something, it's just so late 90s, dude. You have to watch it. I'll leave a link in the description, but I sent it to my assistant, and what do you think? Do you think she fucking watched it? No. This girl, I swear to God, I send her things, I share things with her, and she just doesn't fucking keep up with them. I just can't. I can't. Whatever. First of all, the instrumental in that song, fucking great. But second of all, another song called Хочешь, which is basically, do you want? Technically, it's just want, but with a question mark. If you speak any other language but English, you probably understand what I mean exactly, because we don't have like do. We don't have the same rules for grammar. We don't have like, oh, we have to put do first and then you, like a noun second, and then a verb third, or whatever the hell. Like, we don't have that. It's just a verb instead of anything else. That's why when you watch something with a lot of with someone who's like an immigrant or something like that speaking English, they oftentimes just say the verb with a question mark at the end, kind of like, instead of being like, do you want to do this, they just kind of like, want this song cracked me up. The lyrics are actually, listen to the song, it's very catchy. The music video is like so late 90s, so like contempo postmodern music video clip. It's really, really of the time. I really love that. But the lyrics being, please don't die, or I'll have to too. You'll go straight to heaven, of course, but I don't think I'm getting in. Do you want sweet oranges? Do you want to hear some long stories? Do you want me to blow up all the stars that keep you awake? The way that the sentences are constructed in Russian, it's kind of like asking you, do you want me to do this? Do you want me to do this? With a bit more urgency, because it doesn't have the same vibe. Fuck, it's so hard to explain. Holy shit, that's why I'm not a translator. Please just live. As you can see, I live for you. My immense love is more than enough for the both of us. Do you want to sail the seas? Do you want the newest music? Do you want me to kill the neighbors who keep you awake? Do you want the sun instead of a lamp? Do you want the Alps outside your window? Do you want me to give up all the songs about you? This girl, something about the way that it's written, something about the way that she even sings it, the melodies. And this is what I actually want to talk about more. And I hope that if you are a musician or you studied music before, that you would, sound off in the comments with an explanation, maybe, or not an explanation, but any info that you have about regional melodies or regional approaches to scales in music, because there's something so Eastern European about the melodies that she chooses and the way that she phrases everything. It just aligns a lot more with me. Like, I immediately feel the type of relationship that she has with this person compared to whenever I listen to something that is written by someone who's an Anglophone originally. It just has such a different vibe, and specifically musically, something about the melodies. And I know that there's traditional melodies that we have that are kind of, pretty normal for us, but sound kind of strange to people of other cultures. It's kind of like listening to the scales being played, or like melodies from the Middle East, for example, being played on their instruments. I don't know the names of those instruments, but you guys might know them. It is such a different melody, not just because it's a different genre, but because there's something with the treatment of the notes, of which ones are the convention. Do you know what I mean? Like the chords that are chosen, the way that people sing on those songs. And I think that it's partially why Fiona Apple, for example, falls into this category for me of these artists like this, like mostly like femme artists who have this approach where their singing can be a little bit jarring at first because it doesn't have the conventional notes or chord progressions as the opening part of the song. This is the reason why it's so much harder to listen to these artists, why it's so much harder to get into their albums at first. Obviously, they're a lot more experimental to begin with. There's also, like, I'm a sucker for catchy music. I genuinely am. I will listen to some trash sometimes, like some really shitty songs just because they're fucking catchy as shit. This is why I absolutely love the late 2000s, early 2010s music that is club and R&B related, not because it's shitty, but because they make such catchy music that's actually complex and interesting to listen to. The beats that people were producing. Timbaland, as much as I don't like the guy for like his like personal shit, the fact that he's like doing AI shit now, which is like How the Mighty Have Fallen, god, do I love the beats that he was producing back then. Holy shit. It's just, dude, I was born to listen to 4 minutes. Like, that was literally what I was born for. In any case, this is kind of the reason why it's so difficult to get into these artists, is because they don't use conventions. They don't use a lot of the note and chord progressions that we are used to that sound really pleasant to the ear. And it's not because they're choosing something that's not technically in the right key or something, but it's genuinely just circumventing convention that is jarring to you, which is the reason why a lot of indie music feels that way, right? Because oftentimes people who have to be their own producers and play multiple instruments and arrange the music and mix the music themselves, they kind of have this accidental experimentation baked into their process because they don't walk into established groups of musicians and producers that kind of have a set way of doing things and have their own style already, with conventions sometimes being passed down from one producer teaching their apprentice. 2 songs that I'm recommending from Zemfira, they are actually really catchy. This is kind of like recommending Fiona Apple's Paper Bag or Fast As You Can, Criminal, you know? It's like, yeah, maybe it's gonna be hard for you to get into it anyway because it is still indie. So oftentimes these albums become kind of albums that you listen to only a few times, but they leave a huge impact on your life. My favorite albums, it's a really rare combination when you have an album that both has this indie quality, has this accidental experimentation baked into it because they're figuring out their own ways of producing and recording and other things like that. So the biggest gift to the world is when, well, the biggest gift to me personally is when it's an album that has all of those qualities, but at the same time is still full of at least 2 to 3 really, really catchy songs that at least have a catchy spot somewhere. That way I can satiate both of my interests, which is a conceptual type of album, but also an album that is catchy. I think what I want musicians who are listening to this to report on is specifically these conventions of chords and stuff like that and how they differ and why some melodies, not just in terms of genre, but in terms of just how people sing and stuff like that, why it can sound like they're singing out of key, even though they are in a key, but just in a different convention of a different part of the world, if that makes sense. Obviously, my music theory is quite limited. I'm not as comfortable with it, not as quick with it as with visual arts, so I would love for someone to give me their thoughts if this is like their main type of art. Let's go back to this album that was sent in for Anita. I responded to G Norway and I said that I really like the language and Cowards and how they flow into each other because the album has transitions that are baked into the songs themselves. So sometimes you're like, I was listening to it while I was walking around and I didn't notice sometimes that the song kind of transitioned into the next one in a couple of spots, and it's a good thing because you would want an album to sound so cohesive that you can listen from the first song to the last song and it feels like it's a connected piece. I mentioned those 2 songs. Let me like tell you. Okay, so the language, right? The lyrics are patricide. I don't mind if the crime is right. Get the knife, cross the line. Now he's out of time. If a man only speaks with violence, hell hath no fury. So I know you'll make it painful, angel. Tear his limbs like a rag doll so he never hurts another lover. Tie rocks to his ankle so he's sure to hit the bottom. If a man only speaks with violence, I don't blame you if you learn the language. I kind of mentioned that the language and cowards left the biggest impression on me because I just liked them the most on the first listen. And Gino responded to it with an interesting thought that I thought we should discuss in an episode, specifically because I want to talk about anger and anger as a response to treatment, right? They're saying, I'm so excited to hear that you gravitated towards the language and cowards. Yes, we need to bully back. Bully back. I've gotten some pushback on the language with people saying it's encouraging violence or just about hating men. If you do end up sharing thoughts on the pod, please note that Cowards employs the story and testimony of Lorena Gallo, who was on trial in 1994 and 95 for cutting off her husband's appendage after years of abuse and rape. She didn't cut it off out of malice or revenge, but rather because she entered an altered psychological state explained during the trial as battered woman syndrome. The language references her story in its bridge. The refrigerator light illuminated the kitchen knife, not to glorify it because the experience was horrible for Lorena, but as an example of violence that I'm not going to condemn. I'm going to stand with imperfect survivors unconditionally. Coward samples sexist and racist radio TV segments that mocked Lorena during the trial. The song hopes to lay plain how disgusting and cowardly these media figures and any people that defend support abusers are. Lorena is currently a DV advocate and has her own foundation. This is really interesting to me because I'm trying to figure out recently whether it is a cultural thing or if it's just a me thing or if it's a combination of the two. I don't know. But to me, if someone, I just remember growing up that I have never been told by my parents that I can't push back. And actually, I was told the opposite, that I should push back if anything. If anything happens, always do whatever you need to do to protect yourself or to respond at least in equal measure. Better yet, if it's even worse than what was done, just so they learned their lesson. But on top of it all, they were always telling me, like my parents always told me that they would always back me up. You know, like if something happens in school, respond however you need to respond. We'll come and we'll have your back. If someone punches you, punch back, and we will have you back. When you don't have to worry that we're going to be mad at you for standing up for yourself. So I don't know if this is just my family thing, but to me, it always seemed like, honestly, aggression in response or violence in response to violence have always been expected. We discussed this recently when I was talking about how nationalism is a tool of the bourgeois class and how I personally do not believe in pushing and then cowering and then being like, I didn't do anything, you know, this whole thing of being the aggressor and then trying to pretend like you're a victim kind of thing. I'd rather we have like a full fight. And I found that culturally speaking here, standing your own ground, and I don't even mean pushing back, like not even pushing back as much as just standing your ground and not moving back and cowering and like trying to appease the other party that's being unreasonable. People see you as aggressive here, which is so wild to me. And again, I don't know how much of it is cultural and how much of it is just me, because I know that I've always been like that too. And even in my family, with my extended family, I've always had a lot of conflict because of how I am. But again, even with all that conflict within my even extended family, they don't mind it because it's considered to be just like we're just different people and we're stating our opinion. It's like not a bad thing, I guess. I think like we might be mad at each other, but no one's gonna be like, don't talk about it, or you shouldn't be talking about this to each other, or whatever the hell. So I assume that maybe it's just my family dynamic. I'm not sure. This is why it's so wild to me to hear this type of rhetoric or this type of pushback to you, because I don't think there's anything wrong with like, it's kind of like how people would, when I moved here and I like heard about like chattel slavery bullshit. Because the thing is, I've known about it. I just didn't know how bad it was because I thought it was similar to slavery that was going on in Europe and stuff like that, which was also bad. But it's just so much worse here, the way that it happened, to an extent that you always hear a new thing and you're like, that can't be right. Seriously? That's like so evil on such a level that you can't even comprehend. It was really surprising to me that when people would be talking about it passionately, people who were affected by it, mostly like African Americans, I guess African Canadians, there would be so much discomfort in the room, not even because people are uncomfortable with the conversation because it's about a really dark topic, as much as people think it's aggressive or unreasonable. I don't know, just culturally speaking, the amount of victimhood that you have to perform for people to be comfortable with you is ridiculous. The amount of docile behavior you have to constantly perform, even if you're not docile, is wild to me. Yes, I would get judged as like, or like called a bitch back home for my personality, or well, not really a bitch, but like I guess bossy maybe. I would like maybe comments like, oh, she just doesn't get fucked enough or something like that, you know, which is obviously misogyny. But people usually wouldn't feel so threatened or would kind of ice you out as much as they're just gonna think that this is just like part of your personality, whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's not, you're not seen as aggressive as much as you're just seen as assertive, or sometimes if not assertive, just like, oh, she doesn't get fucked enough kind of thing. They still will shut the fuck up if you do your job well. Here, I think that there's so much, especially in Canada, I don't think it's as egregious with Americans because Americans are a little bit more forward with their aggressiveness too. But here it's like very passive. Can be very damaging, I think, for community building because you're constantly around people who are kind of like amicable with you, but none of them are actually standing with you. So you are constantly creating like mini societies, this communities around you through just being a human being and interacting with the environment and becoming a person that lives in a specific area for a period of time. And you just end up being surrounded by people who don't align with you at all because there's this unspoken rule of just like not actually speaking on anything that matters whatsoever. And in combination with a lot of this rot that hasn't been cleaned out, by rot I mean like the Operation Paperclip, the way that Nazis have ended up here, the way that capitalist system creating so many assholes, all of it just like festering, plantation owners not being all killed when they were supposed to be, creates a really weird environment where you kind of don't talk to each other about things except for those horrible ass people who are the rot of this society, connecting and speaking to each other honestly about their bullshit, collaborating and creating networks, to compare to people who are more sane and normal, who feel like they're overstepping if they're voicing any type of opinion. And this is kind of how like you end up with our journalists here right now not being protected from far-right attacks, like with Rachel. I don't remember her last name, but I'll put it on the screen. This is how you get these weird groups popping up all over the country and other things like that, because people who are valuing community are socialized not to talk to each other and not to build community around common ground and understanding and also ideas of equality. But the ones who are building community that is a network are the ones who don't value things that regular people value, if that makes sense. Just as you've said, I think it's really strange that people have been mad about these two songs, you know, or said that they glorify something. I don't understand that point. And I mean, I understand if you... Actually, no, I don't understand if people think that. That's just ridiculous. I think that most of all, I have said that before, maybe one time or a couple of times, that I literally, when I was in Calgary high school, we had this English class, like English 20 or some shit like that. And we were talking about this Indian village where the women have banded together and they, again, chopped off the appendage and killed a guy who was assaying everybody and like murdering people and other things like that, because the police weren't doing anything about it, the men weren't doing anything about it, so they just like did it. And the guys in class were so shocked and horrified by it, which is something that is so disgusting to me. I was so disgusted by them. I genuinely was like, ew, you guys suck so much ass. Because in this scenario, you take a side of someone who's so disgusting instead of a whole community of women and children. And it's so weird that you take sides based on gender, not based on who is the instigator of the violence. Fucking strange, weird, and diabolical, honestly. But on top of it all, I told them that I would do the same. Like, what are we supposed to do? Just sit around and do nothing? Like, no, someone's gonna have to off that guy. Like, someone's gonna have to do it. Otherwise, you're also a shitty person, honestly, if you just let things like that happen. Congratulations, you're not a peaceful or a Switzerland. By the way, using Switzerland as like neutral is crazy. But you're not being neutral. You are supporting the oppressor, because just doing nothing in a system that prioritizes one group over the other is prioritizing one group over the other, because the system is still going to be intact. Yeah, I've said that before too. I think that they like 3 guys from my class like followed me after class, threatening me. I've never been fucking threatened by guys back in Siberia, but I was threatened here, and I was like, you bitches are really annoying. But I think I'd still say it again and again and again, actually, because people need to know their place. Like, you need to know where the boundaries are. You can't just be walking all over them and then think that everyone's supposed to be good with it. Like, that's ridiculous. The point is, yeah, bully back, first of all. Second of all, there's nothing morally, at least in my book, bad about actually standing on business and giving a fuck and doing whatever needs to be done to protect people who cannot do it for themselves for whatever reason. I don't think that there's anything wrong with pushing back or taking away, for example, billionaires' shit that they have stolen from people, making them suffer in a myriad of ways just for their pockets to get bigger and bigger. Those people, no, I don't feel bad for them. No, I don't see violence. I don't even see violence against them as violence, actually. That's what I think. And if someone's like, oh, it's glorifying violence, I don't care. I don't care. I genuinely don't. After this many years of them doing whatever the fuck they want, of killing millions of people upon millions of people every single year through bureaucracy and actual violence like bombing and stuff like that, you want me to be cute about it? No, actually. Anyway, I'll make like a playlist. Hopefully you guys have fun discussions in the comments. I'm thinking about maybe in the future doing some podcasts that are recorded live. If you have any ideas for that, or if you have any requests for that, let me know, because I'm going to be streaming on Thursdays and Sundays on both Twitch and YouTube at the same time. One of them is going to be more like gaming kind of thing and like just like chatting. And another one, I want it to be more of a variety thing. So if you have any things that you would want to be discussing, talking about, doing arts related or anything like that, let me know. Hope you're having a good day. Bye.